A blue whale can weigh more than 100 tons, yet almost everything it eats is smaller than a human finger. This is one of the greatest contradictions in the natural world. The largest animal ever known does not hunt giant squid, sharks, or other whales. It survives almost entirely by consuming krill, tiny shrimp-like animals that gather in enormous clouds beneath the surface. But a body this large cannot survive by chasing individual prey. A blue whale must collect millions of krill in a single feeding season. And it does so with one of the most dramatic hunting techniques in the ocean. It accelerates toward a dense swarm, opens its mouth, expands the underside of its body, and engulfs an enormous volume of water in seconds. For a brief moment, the whale becomes less like an animal and more like a moving ocean. This behavior is called lunge feeding, and it allows the blue whale to turn its entire body into the largest biological feeding machine on Earth. From the outside, a feeding blue whale may appear slow and peaceful. Its long back rises through the surface, followed by the small dorsal fin near the tail. But beneath the water, every successful feeding lunge begins with careful positioning. The whale must locate a swarm of krill dense enough to justify the effort. Krill do not remain evenly spread throughout the sea. They gather in patches that can vary in size, depth, and concentration. Some swarms are too thin to provide enough energy. Others are too deep, requiring a long and costly dive. The whale must decide which group is worth attacking. This is important because opening its mouth creates enormous drag. The whale loses speed almost immediately, and after each lunge, it must recover before feeding again. A poorly chosen attack wastes both time and energy. The largest animal in the world cannot afford to eat carelessly. As the whale approaches a promising swarm, it begins to accelerate. Blue whales are not built like fast, narrow-bodied predators, but they can generate surprising speed over short distances. Their enormous tails push against the water, driving the body toward the prey. Then the jaws open, the lower jaw drops, and the throat begins to expand. Along the underside of the whale's mouth and belly are dozens of deep grooves known as ventral pleats. These folds normally lie close together, giving the body a streamlined shape. During a feeding lunge, they stretch outward like the fabric of a giant parachute. This expansion allows the whale's mouth to hold a volume of water that may be greater than the whale's own body volume before the lunge began. The change happens within seconds. The narrow, streamlined animal suddenly becomes a huge living bag filled with seawater and prey. The forces involved are extraordinary. Water is heavy, and the whale is moving quickly when the mouth opens. The jaws, muscles, nerves, and connective tissues must survive the sudden pressure of an enormous mass entering the body. The lower jaw bones of a blue whale are among the largest bones in the animal kingdom. They are connected by flexible tissues that allow the mouth to spread wider than a rigid skull would permit. Specialized nerves can stretch without tearing as the throat expands. Powerful muscles control the movement of the jaw and help manage the enormous load of water. Every part of the feeding system has evolved to perform an action that would injure a less specialized animal. The whale is not simply opening its mouth. It is temporarily rebuilding the shape of its entire front half. Once the water and krill have been engulfed, the whale closes its jaws and begins pushing the water back out. Blue whales do not have teeth. Instead, they possess hundreds of baleen plates hanging from the upper jaw. Baleen is made of keratin, the same basic material found in human hair and fingernails. Each plate has a rough, fringed inner edge. As the whale presses its tongue upward, water escapes through the baleen, but the krill remain trapped inside. The whale then swallows the concentrated prey. The process transforms a mouthful containing tens of thousands of liters of seawater into a manageable mass of food. The baleen functions like a giant filter, separating energy from the ocean. The blue whale's tongue is itself enormous, weighing as much as a large land animal. It helps control the water inside the mouth and pushes it toward the baleen. Yet despite the size of the whale, its throat is relatively narrow compared with the rest of its body. It is designed to swallow krill and small fish, not large animals. This is why the image of a blue whale swallowing a human is misleading. A person could theoretically fit inside the expanded mouth during a feeding lunge, but the whale would not be able to swallow a human in the way it swallows krill. The feeding system is built for processing vast numbers of tiny prey, not a few large ones. Everything about the whale's anatomy reflects this strategy. Lunge feeding creates a powerful energy problem. Accelerating a body weighing more than 100 tons requires enormous effort. Opening the mouth produces intense resistance, slowing the whale almost to a stop. After filtering and swallowing the krill, the animal must accelerate again before the next attack. Researchers studying blue whale movement have found that the whales do not simply lunge continuously whenever prey is present. They adjust their feeding behavior according to the density and depth of the swarm. When krill are highly concentrated, the energy gained from one mouthful can greatly exceed the cost of the dive and acceleration. When prey is scattered, the same movement may not be worthwhile. The blue whale's survival therefore depends on selecting the richest patches. It must read the underwater landscape of food and choose moments when one enormous action produces an even larger reward. This strategy explains why blue whales travel great distances to reach seasonal feeding grounds. In productive waters, ocean currents bring nutrients toward the surface, supporting phytoplankton, which in turn support vast numbers of krill. Cold regions and areas of upwelling can produce dense swarms capable of feeding multiple whales. Blue whales may spend months following these resources, building the fat reserves needed for migration and reproduction. During productive feeding periods, an adult can consume several tons of krill in a day. That amount may represent tens of millions of individual animals. The number sounds impossible until one understands the scale of each lunge. The whale does not capture prey one by one. It harvests an entire section of the ocean. Blue whales can attack krill from several directions. Some lunges occur horizontally, with the whale swimming directly into a swarm. Others begin below the prey. The whale turns upward, accelerating toward the surface and opening its mouth as it enters the densest part of the group, near the surface. The krill may have fewer directions in which to escape. In certain situations, blue whales roll partly onto one side during the approach. This may help them see and position the prey more accurately before the final acceleration. The whale's eyes are located on the sides of its head, far from the center of the enormous mouth. By rolling, it can align one eye with the target and guide the jaws into the swarm. What appears to be a simple forward rush is actually a carefully controlled three-dimensional maneuver. The krill are not passive. When a predator approaches, the swarm can tighten, scatter, or change direction, Each individual krill is small, but together they create a moving target with its own defensive behavior. The blue whale must time its attack before the group escapes. It uses vision, memory, and possibly information from previous feeding attempts to anticipate where the swarm will move. Scientists have attached temporary tags containing sensors and cameras to blue whales, revealing dives, body rotations, speed changes, and feeding lunges that are impossible to see from the surface. These recordings show that blue whales are active, precise hunters, not slow giants, drifting with their mouths open. Every lunge involves a decision about angle, speed, depth, and timing. Feeding behavior also changes between day and night. In many regions, krill move vertically through the water according to a daily cycle. During daylight, they may remain deeper, where darkness offers protection from visual predators. At night, they rise closer to the surface to feed. Blue whales can follow this movement, diving deeper during the day and feeding at shallower depths after sunset. However, the pattern is not always simple. Krill behavior changes with location, season, predators, and ocean conditions. The whale must respond to what the prey is doing in real time. A feeding strategy that worked yesterday may be inefficient today. This makes flexibility essential. The whale's great size offers enormous advantages, but it also creates limits. Smaller animals can turn quickly, pursue scattered prey, and survive on small meals. A blue whale cannot. Its body demands huge quantities of energy, and its feeding method only becomes efficient when prey reaches high densities. The whale depends on the existence of concentrated krill swarms. If warming oceans, changing currents, declining sea ice, or industrial fishing reduce the availability of those swarms, the whale cannot simply switch to chasing individual animals. Its entire body has evolved around abundance. The largest creature on Earth survives because tiny organisms gather together in numbers large enough to support it. This connection makes the blue whale both powerful and vulnerable. It can cross entire ocean basins and dive hundreds of meters, but it remains dependent on the movements of animals small enough to fit on a fingertip. The feeding lunge also reveals an unusual rule of biology. As animals become larger, many forms of movement become more expensive. Yet blue whales evolved a strategy in which greater size can increase feeding efficiency. A larger mouth can engulf more water. A longer body can support greater acceleration and energy storage. Once prey density passes a certain threshold, the rewards of being enormous become extraordinary. This may help explain how baleen whales reached such extreme sizes. Productive oceans created dense patches of small prey, and whales capable of engulfing more water gained access to more energy. Across evolutionary time, bigger bodies and larger mouths became increasingly successful, eventually producing the blue whale. But there is likely an upper limit. The heart, inferting, bones, and circulatory system must support the cost of moving such a giant body. Prey must be dense enough to repay each attack. The blue whale exists near the edge of what the ocean can physically and energetically support. Every feeding lunge is a demonstration of that balance. Too little prey, and the action becomes wasteful. Enough prey, and one opening of the mouth can power an animal larger than any dinosaur known to science. From the surface, Most of this remains invisible. A distant observer may see a blow rising several meters into the air, followed by the slow curve of the back. The whale may take several breaths and then disappear. Beneath the surface, it dives toward a dark cloud of krill. The body tilts downward. The tail rises and pushes once more before vanishing. At depth, the whale locates the swarm, turns, and begins to accelerate. Its mouth opens. The throat expands. Water rushes inward with millions of tiny animals suspended inside it. The whale slows beneath the weight of the ocean it has captured. Then the jaws close. The water is forced through the baleen, and the krill remain. A few minutes later, the whale returns to the surface and releases a warm column of breath into the sky. The entire sequence may repeat dozens of times, each lunge converting a dense patch of marine life into the energy required to move the largest body the planet has ever produced. The true wonder of the blue whale is not simply that it is large. It is that every part of its life depends on controlling scale. It searches across thousands of kilometers for prey, measured in centimeters. It carries a mouth capable of engulfing a volume of water greater than many swimming pools. It uses plates made of keratin to filter animals that individually provide almost no energy, yet collectively support a giant. It does not defeat the ocean by overpowering it. It survives by briefly taking the ocean inside itself, removing what it needs, and releasing the rest. For a few seconds during each lunge, the boundary between whale and sea almost disappears. Water, krill, muscle, and movement become part of one enormous machine. Then the mouth closes, the ocean flows out, and the giant continues forward, powered by the smallest prey in the sea.